Welcome to the Working Theory podcast with Max from Navica Consulting and Brooks from Framework Solutions. Between the two of them, they've spent years using Karbon inside accounting firms and have helped hundreds of other firms get up and running with Karbon. This podcast is for the firms who are ready to go beyond the basics and take a deep dive into the interworkings of Karbon.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about firm revenue and how best to management. And what we're really going to be covering is why fixed fee is really the way to go and the best sustainable way to grow your firm.
Yeah. If you're running a firm today and you want to have sustainable long-term profitability, the only way to do that sustainably long-term is through some kind of fixed fee work. But kind of a bold statement, a lot of firms run on hourly billing and a lot of firms are very profitable on hourly billing. So how can we say that fixed fee has got to be the way that you go? So before we get into how we actually manage this, like why is it that fixed fee is the long-term sustainable way to go?
Yeah. You know, if you think through, hourly versus fixed fee, right? Obviously under hourly, your profit per hour remains relatively fixed. Right? So that seems pretty safe, right? No matter how many hours you work, like you're going to be getting pretty much a fixed profit per hour.
Is that true though, Brooks?
Well, I mean, assuming that you're paying your employees hourly, right?
And you don't just write it all down when you go to bill it.
Exactly. But the thing with fixed fee is most people probably think of is like, okay, well, if I'm just charging a fixed fee, then I'm charging my employees hourly, like maybe a lot of, obviously you're going to have a mix, right? Some are hourly, some are salary, but for whatever reason, most of the time people's costs are kind of shifting, right? They're changing based on how much, and that affects it, right? Because some months you might be doing more work for a client, some months you might be doing less. So your profit per hour can tend to shift up and down if you're charging a fixed fee, which can be daunting if you're thinking through it.
Yeah. In my opinion, though, and very strong opinion, is that once you have a fixed fee, a lot of really good things happen. One, your clients agreed to pay it. So I don't know if I know that firm that I worked in, we had a big bill and we would always just write it down if it was so much over what we billed them last time, just because there was a bunch of fear or anxiety around how the client would respond to that and if they would respond negatively and if they would, possibly go look for another firm or price shop because they got a large unexpected bill. And so when you have fixed fee, the client already knows what the price is. They've already agreed to pay it up front. So that's good. So when you send them the bill, there's no surprises there. So it's a good client experience. But on the flip side, if you're billing hourly, all of the incentives all the way throughout the organization are just to slow roll it. And actually, there's no benefit to do the work faster. And so when you have fixed fee billing, now you get two really strong incentives. One, to do the work fast, and two, to do the work right so it doesn't come back. Because the absolute worst way to kill your profit margin is for the work to go out and then come back because it isn't right. And so, in my opinion, moving to fixed fee is really good for customers. It's really good for the customer relationship because you have that locked in. And then also it aligns the incentives internally with internal management, internal leadership in the firm to try to get better at doing this work. And when you actually get better at doing the work, you're rewarded with higher profit, as opposed to with the hourly model, when you get better at doing the work, you're penalized, or you just write it up with the client.
Yeah, you actually make less money if you do it faster.
Yeah. So long-term sustainability. So here's the other reason, Brooks, though, too, why fixed fee I think is got to be the way to go, because it ties in with a bunch of other stuff, which is more and better AI tools, and more and better tools, just even like Karbon, and other tools that we have the ability to move some of that tedious data entry stuff off to a system. The new firms coming into the industry now are going automation first, automation heavy. And there's arguments about whether that's good or bad for clients. I argue that it can be very good for clients if you take all that time you're spending doing manual stuff in the background and you shift all of that time to client-facing interaction, and you're having agents and software and automations that do a bunch of that back end work, you're getting a better product out the back end, then you're going to have firms that are coming into the industry that are going to be able to provide faster work, better work at a lower price. And so if you don't move to this model now, you're gonna be in that position where the only reason that you've got your clients is because your clients like you. It's not going to be because your work is better. It's not going to be because you're faster, and it's not going to be because you're better. And so that puts you in a very tough situation for long-term sustainable growth.
Yeah. And also, like, it just occurred to me too that if you're charging hourly only and you're trying to implement automation, then your automation's actually causing you to earn less money.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy. I hadn't actually thought about that way before, but that is an interesting thought. Yeah, that's why you hear the term like value-based billing a lot when you talk about fixed fee, and that's because you're fixing your price on the value you're delivering, not on the amount of effort that you're putting into it.
Right. So that actually takes us into, so let's all just assume that we agree that we want to move to some kind of fixed fee. Now, fixed fee can be just like we charge whatever, $500 for a 1040 plus $50 per K1 or whatever it is. That's one way of fixed fee. The other way you can do fixed fee is like value billing, which is where you sit down, you talk with the client, and then you talk about how much value you can bring, and then you set some kind of fixed fees. It's not like a price sheet, but once you agree on the fee, then the fee is fixed at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could look like, I mean, annual fee. I think that's probably a little bit rare. More likely, someone's charging a monthly fee, or even a weekly fee.
Yeah, I used to charge a weekly fee, and I like the weekly fee because we had weekly payroll, and but it does get a little tedious, and it's a lot of bills.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the monthly fee cadence. I think it makes sense for clients.
Yeah.
But let's assume we agree that we're moving towards fixed fee. Then how do we actually do that? Like how does that impact how we work in Karbon? How do we actually make sure that when we pick a fixed fee, that it's going to survive, like that we're going to survive or be able to survive on that fixed fee? Basically, how do we manage that?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing you kind of have to know, right, going in is what is your like fully loaded internal cost, right? Like, and I don't know if you need to be so granular that you kind of need to know every single individual employee's fully loaded cost, but you could probably average it out, right? You could probably say like, hey, we have like our fully loaded rate is for our employees, right, or team members is, say $50 an hour, right? You could probably get a pretty good estimate, right? And then once you know that, then you can say like, okay, well, that means our kind of internal rate, like we need to hit a certain profit per hour that we would like to have, right? So say if you're like, hey, we want to have $100 of profit per hour worked, which means that like your internal rate would then need to be 150, right? So 150 minus your fully loaded internal cost of 50 is 100, right? So then you kind of use that. You can use that like internal rate of 150 and then go from there, right? Now you can say like, okay, well, I anticipate that looking at all the work we're going to be doing for this client for the year, that it's going to be, 20, I don't know, like let's just say 500 hours, right? 500 hours for the year, right? Now you're getting somewhere, right? You have a pretty good idea, and this is where, we could talk more about this on like how you even get to the point where you're able to figure out how much hours you're going to do on the client that year, because that is a bit of an estimate, I guess, right? But if you're like,
it's a whole animal.
Yeah, it's this whole thing. And then if you're like, hey, that's 500, right? We're going to potentially do 500 hours for this client per year, then multiply by your internal rate of 150, right? And that gives you a number, right? And now you're somewhere, right? Now you know like what your kind of annual rate needs to be to serve that client, and then you can divide that by 12 or 52, depending on how you want to bill for that. That's how you can get to like knowing your baseline, right? Like what is your fully loaded internal cost? And I mean, usually we can think of that in terms of probably like direct cost. It probably gets a little bit too complicated if you're going to start throwing in like indirect costs, right? Like, or admin costs and all that kind of stuff. You can probably deal with that in a different way, but But yeah, that's kind of in general the best approach in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think so. The what we can take away from that though is that one of the first things that you have to know in order to do fixed fee well, any kind of fixed fee agreement with a client, is you need to know your cost factors. So because you can very quickly say, yeah, we will do X, Y, Z. We're going to lock ourselves into an annual agreement, so 12-month agreement to do your bookkeeping for this much money. And if you don't have a good handle on what your actual internal costs are to deliver that, then doing that work can actually be unprofitable for you. You can pay money out of the firm coffers to complete that work if you're not careful. So step one is understand your baseline, understand your baseline costs, and then come up with a formula. And this could be like a afternoon. You sit down with the books and you do some math and you come up with some rules of thumb. And with those rules, you can develop a number, like Brooks just said. Like we want to hit for say like CAS work, it's got to be $150 an hour built. So then we do our estimates. So then that goes right into the next step. Once you know what your costs are, the next step you need to know is you need to know what your effort is going to be. So you need to have some kind of system to be able to get an idea of how long it's going to take you to do the work. Because if you don't have an idea about that, same kind of thing. You can say, oh, I think we can do this in 500 hours. And if it takes you 1,000 hours, there goes your profit. Now, I would argue, and kind of I think the thing that we want to land on eventually is that you don't need to know that stuff perfectly well up front. One of the things that the kind of the theory, the theory of this whole process is that you can start out a new client on a short-term engagement and just say that, hey, client, I'm going to lock my price in. I'm going to charge you, let's just say it's $500 a month for the next 3 months. And this is the work that I'm going to do. And then we're going to do a fee review. And so we're going to review how much effort it took me. You know, we're doing our best to estimate it, but we're going to see how much effort did it take for me to do this? Was it harder than we expected? Because we learned some things. Was it easier than we expected or whatever? And then we'll do a fee review at the end of that month. And we're just going to be transparent with you. If you're working with other businesses, then they understand how profit works and how a fee review works. And so you sit down with them and you say, at the end of 3 months, and you say, hey, this was way harder. And so in order for us to do this work, you're either going to have to make this easier for us somehow, or we're going to have to raise your rate in order to make this work. And when you raise that rate, when you talk to them about how all that works, if you think about managing your revenue, if you were a little bit under your revenue for that first 3 months, then you can overshoot your revenue needs for the next few months, and then you can bring it back into a line. So as long as you're not in a position where you need every dollar today, you can treat the revenue relationship over a longer period of time. And earn back if you really did a bad job of estimating those first 3 months, that's okay. Eat it then and then earn it back over time. And that does a lot of really good things because it gets the client in the practice of going through a fee review. And you're going to do that annually anyway. And every fee review, well, we should talk about this. So what are the things that we need to do in every fee review?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to make sure you're coming into that call with like actual information, right? About like, 'cause if you go in and you just say, hey, it's just harder, right? You just leave it at that, right? That's not anything for them to work off of, right? You need to come into those calls saying like, hey, because of X, Y, and Z, right? Or like, hey, we discovered you had 2 additional checking accounts we didn't know about, right? Turns out we didn't realize that your company was growing by, this would be insane, but like 50% per month, right? And all of a sudden your amount of efforts is skyrocketing on a bookkeeping level because their amount of transactions is increasing by that amount, right? So if you can come in and actually give like exact reasons like that of why you're going to need to raise their rate, don't just say, hey, it's hard, or it's harder than we thought, right? The one thing I will say that you should avoid is try not to put things in terms of hours worked, right? Because that will lead you down a road that you don't want to go down. right? And guarantee clients will ask this. If you say, because of like, here are the 5 reasons why we need to raise your rate, it's due to X, Y, and Z. A lot of them probably will say, okay, well, how many hours did you work last month? Like, how many hours did it require? The trick is to steer away from that conversation, right? Because what you're offering is value-based billing, right? You're offering a deliverable. You're not offering hours, right? You're not offering labor. So try to keep the conversation away from talking about labor and more towards what are you delivering.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And part of that really is you as a business owner should be rewarded for improving your internal process. And so the number of hours you're spending on that engagement should be reducing over time as you're doing process improvement. And actually that kind of goes into the next thing that we were going to talk about, Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 ways that you then lever profit, right? So there's 2 ways that you lever profit in a fee review. The first is throughout the year, throughout the entire engagement, you have to be constantly improving your process, especially with where we are now, with the tools that are coming out, and with AI, and with the way that the labor force is. There's less highly skilled like CPAs available for hire than ever, right? But there are some very highly skilled, very intelligent people coming out of colleges who are ready to work and use these tools natively. And so you should be always improving your internal process. The more you improve your internal process, the more profit you're going to be able to get out of that engagement. And then on the flip side, Brooks, if you want to talk about the second lever.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the second lever is, raising your rate, right? Simply like the way to get more money is to charge more, right?
But Brooks, if you charge me more money, what am I going to say?
Like, why? Right?
Yeah.
What are you giving me, right? In return, like that, we all kind of expect that. If someone charges more, then you expect to get at least something more, right? Receive something more.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So when you go into the fee review should always be increasing. However, it's just poor stewardship of the relationship if you go into the fee review and you're like, hey, your fee's going up. I think they're businesses, and you can even, Brooks, you have a funny story about a firm that you worked for in the past where in those fee review meetings, the person talking to the client would say, yeah, I'm raising your fee. You should be also raising your fee with your clients and your customers.
Yeah, exactly.
So it can be a way that we can really have that conversation. Business owners and clients should know that that is a normal thing to do. However, if we're going to raise our fee, then we should also be working to expand the scope and expand the amount of value that we're delivering for that fee. And we do that through the improvements. So you constantly have to be improving the way you do work within your firm, coming up with better services to offer your clients. And so when you come to the table to do a fee review and you say, hey, we've got to increase the price. The price was $500 a month, and now it's going to go to, $560 or $575 or whatever it is. And here's why. I mean, and you know this because you're a business owner. So you know that like right now it's 60% higher cost to buy a computer because of AI and RAM and all this stuff. Or we have, inflation is up, so we're paying our staff more. And so you tell the story about here are the things that have gone up. Our costs have gone up, and so our fees have to go up. And that's true for you as well. Your costs have gone up and your fees will have to go up to your customers. But we're not just going to raise your fee and be like, thank you so much for more money. Here's what we're also doing internally to provide you better service, faster service, a more accurate service, or a different service that maybe they don't, you don't do for them yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the key, right? You mentioned it, like tell your story, right? Like you need to be able to. I mean, when you think about it, like what do streaming services do, right? For like all these streaming services that we subscribe to, like periodically they send us emails that say, hey, we're gonna raise your rate from $14.99 to $16.99 per month, right? What do they always do when they send that email? They also mention like, hey, we're doing this because in the last year we've spent 500 million on producing additional content, and they give reasons why they're doing it, right? it's okay if some of your reasons are due to things outside of your control, right? Like inflation or, um, I mean, I guess I was gonna say paying your employees more. That is in your control, but it's all kind of not, right? You kind of also have to um, give raises to your team if you want them to stick around and reward them for the good job they're doing. So yeah, just make it so that you have a story and it is a story that makes sense and it's something that the client can relate to and understand.
Yeah. You know what? You know what's fascinating about this whole conversation, Brooks, that I've just been thinking about is you actually need a pretty wide range of skills to pull this off by yourself.
Mhm.
Because at the top end, you need to have some very serious analytical chops to understand your internal cost and understand the profit that you need to hit, how to bake in your overhead costs to make sure your profit covers your overhead with the profit amount that you need to get. So you need to be able to do the math up front and know what that is. But then also you need to have like the human side and be able to come up with a story and get that across in a compelling way. So if you're in a firm where you have somebody who's really good at the analytics side, maybe you can split some of those roles up and have the analytic side, the math all done on the back end. Like here's the raw numbers. Here's where we are on the profit side. Here's like how profitable the client is. Here's what the fee should go to and do all the math. And then if you have another person who's really good at the speaking side, the skill side of the human skill side of things, that can then go and take and tell that story to the clients and and come away at the end of the day, you've got to get that profit. At the end of the day, you're providing value for that client. And that's got to be true. You got to be honest about that. If you're not increasing, like you need to inflate the amount of value that you're giving to the client along with the price. That's how you maintain long-term sustainable growth, is by having an engine inside your firm where you are increasing the value that you're flowing to that client along with increasing the price. And you do those internal projects to make that happen better so that you're taking more of that profit home. And you've got to take that profit home to take care of your staff, to buy new equipment, to hire new staff, to increase capacity, to go out and get more customers, more clients, things like that. So that person who's telling that story and getting that client to sign on, being honest with them about how that fee is arrived at and why it is where it is and what the firm is going to do for the client, that person is really kind of going to bat for the rest of the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that occurred to me too, and we've talked about this before, is the subject of lowering fees, right? Which it's kind of a touchy subject, but if you think through, like if you're offering a certain set of services and value for a fee, then if the value or your like deliverables go down, like you probably should honestly consider too, like whether you're actually charging too much, right? So if a customer is going into some sort of like downsizing, like maybe they've cleaned up a bunch of stuff on their side, maybe they've closed some bank accounts, maybe they've simplified their stuff, and you're coming at it, you're like, oh man, now it's taking us a lot less time, and actually not even offering as much as we used to, then I'd say sometimes it probably would actually buy you a lot of goodwill to proactively say like, hey, we're offering less deliverables than we were before, so let's reduce your rate a little bit. This was something that
sacrilege, Brooks, sacrilege.
Yeah, I mean, notice though that it's a bit client driven though in a way, right? It's the client that has reduced scope, right? But I think also if like you're reducing scope as well, right, then you should probably think about reducing what you're charging. Like if your scope is reducing the scope of what you're doing, then your rate should. And I think that could buy a lot of goodwill. I saw a lot of this during COVID, right? And at the last firm I worked at, we actually proactively reduced we identified the sectors that were hardest hit, right? And we reduced our rate. We were like, hey, you know what? Like we're just gonna reduce your fee by 50%, and just proactively. And obviously they all loved it, right? And if we had kept our same rate, we probably would have just lost those clients, right? Because they wouldn't have been able to afford it. So, um, so yeah, I think it's worth. It's definitely not something you should do every time, and every situation is a little bit different. Um, but yeah, the
Yeah.
scope is changing, then up or down. Think about what that means for the rate.
Yeah. Actually, so I'll just tell a quick story. The last firm that I was at, we kind of had some significant growth in this area where there was another accounting firm that they just kind of had this system of they would raise rates like every year. And so their clients were very used to this process of raising rates, but they weren't increasing the value that they were giving to the client. And with accounting firms, you get into this tough situation where that client, they feel a connection with the firm and with the people in the firm. And so that whole relationship is based on the interpersonal relationship. Well, once it gets to a certain point and the client is in that position where they really are struggling to pay that fee, then they go out and they go into the marketplace and they look for something else, and they found out that they were paying double the going rate of that service. And so as accounting firms, I believe we have a responsibility at the human level to those clients to charge them a fair amount. As we get better and as we add more value to the client, we should charge more money for that, absolutely. But we should also be working with the client so that they're paying a fair amount. And so we actually earned several clients from this other firm who had just kind of had their price increases on autopilot for several years. And they came over to us. And I'll tell you, they felt betrayed. They felt like they were taken advantage of. And so that relationship went from very rosy and very nice to very acrimonious very quickly. And so it's kind of a cautionary tale with this concept of like never lower your rates and never leave money on the table and stuff like that. It's not true. You should be charging a fair amount. You have a responsibility, in my opinion, to get better at the work that you do so that when you go out to your client, you're able to flow more value to them at a rate that is fair. And you do that, and they go out to the marketplace. And Brooks, you talk about it. You've had clients who left, they price shopped, like, hey, this other person, it's like a mom and pop place. They can do it for half the price.
Yeah.
And what happens?
Yeah, they usually they go and then they find out that actually the reason why they're charging less is because they're offering less, or
Yeah.
they just don't do a very good job. And so then yeah, we've had people come back and be like, hey, just kidding, can we can we come back, because it actually, the value you provide is a lot better at your higher rate, and we value that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, your clients are buying something other than the finished product of what you're giving them. They what they're valuing is something else. It's peace of mind, or it's confidence, or it's financial planning, or something else that's valuable to them. And so if you can provide that better, if you can unlock what they actually care about and focus your efforts on providing that better, then raise your rates. On the flip side, though, I am a fan if the effort goes down and you're not delivering the same value you did before because the situation changed with the client. Absolutely. Get that rate back down where it should be. Do the fee review and do the right thing. I worked at a Fortune 500 company that they actually had a product that they vertically integrated the product. They were getting premium price on this product that we would deliver, and they vertically integrated it. And this company never lowers prices, but they were like, hey, for this, we are so far, like we're earning so much more profit on this because we just brought it in house, making the product ourselves, that they went out and lowered the prices for the clients. And that was a huge learning experience for me to see that, yes, even a large, very successful, like profitable Fortune 500 company will look at something and be like, this isn't fair. And so let's put this back down into the fair range. All right, Brooks, anything else we should cover?
Yeah, I mean, I will say too, just to kind of add on, is, we're not like, if you have figured out ways to be more efficient in the work you are doing, right? I don't think we're necessarily saying that you should decrease your rate at that point, because right, you're still providing the same value, right? And what's great is if, like, as far as growing, like, and we were talking about things you can do to increase your revenue, like if you can take if you're charging a client $500 and you've been spending 5 hours a month, right? And then you turn that into doing 2.5 hours per month, right? Not only did you just double your profit per hour, but now you might be able to bring in another client and serve them at 2.5 hours a month for 500, and now you got two clients, right? Now you got two $500 clients in the same, and you're in the same amount of time it required to do one, right? So that's how you can really level up. And again, like you're doing this from a perspective of like you made things more efficient for yourself. You're still delivering the same value, maybe even delivering better value. And so you've just leveled up in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, you want the profit per hour is the profit per hour. So if a client decreases their amount of revenue, as long as your profit is good, take that capacity and go get another client who's willing to pay. Okay. Excellent. So just to put a cap on it, you got to know your baseline costs. You got to know your fully loaded cost per staff, derive a profit from that. You've got to understand how much effort it takes to actually deliver the things you're going to try to deliver, and then have a short fee review cycle. At least the first time. Like you don't have to do that all the time, but start out with a 3-month engagement, and then go into your first fee review, and then lock in the prices for 12 months going forward. And yeah, and then just treat that as revenue management. You're managing the revenue relationship over time, just like you're managing the relationship with the client over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
all right, Brooks, that's all I have.
Okay.
I've said it like 4 times now.
Well, I think one thing, I guess, to put a cap on it too, is we didn't necessarily say this, but you do need really good metrics for all this, right? And you do need to be time tracking. So if you're at all tempted to say, oh, we charge a fixed fee, so now let's just stop tracking our time. Like, no, actually, you need to be much better at tracking your time, because if you're not tracking your time, like, then there's no way to know whether you're actually being profitable off of all these fixed fee arrangements.
Yeah. Yeah. It's much harder to understand the level of effort needed to complete those fixed fees. And what I've seen happen is, like, you have one client who's burning all of your staff time. And if you're not tracking that time, or if you don't have visibility on that somehow, then it's hard to tell where all of the time is going. So you can't look at a client and know their profitability if you don't know that one of your staff members is working overtime to get their tasks done.
Yep. Yeah, I do actually remember maybe about, I was about to say like this is a few years ago, but it was actually probably more like 7 or 8 years ago. Like when you go to like QuickBooks Connect or something like that, like there was always these panels about like stop tracking your time, like time tracking is unnecessary, like it's all about value-based billing. I remember at the time going like, what are you guys doing? Like this is dumb. Like and then sure enough, that I know there a few years went by, and I think some people tried it and found out that fell into the pit of like, oh no, what happened to all of our profitability? Now it seems like we're treading water and we're super busy and our revenue's not growing. So that's what really got me onto the mode of tracking time, right? People are telling me to stop tracking time, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. In my previous life, I was a Six Sigma black belt for this Fortune 500 company I used to work for. And I would try so hard to get time data and get like good, accurate time data on processes. Like I'd literally sit there with a stopwatch and like track time with the spreadsheet and stopwatch. And so when I first came to the accounting industry like 6 years ago, and I found out that everyone in my firm uses timers to track time themselves, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a gold mine of data. And then same situation, I heard like these firms going off of time tracking. I was like, oh man, you are giving away like the golden goose of knowledge and information about your firm. But yeah, I mean, you can still do it with a stopwatch and just like spot check time stuff, but to have that information by default in Karbon and run reports against it is just night and day.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it from me. I think that's it from us. Like if you have any thoughts or disagree with anything, feel free to leave it in the comments, and we'll appreciate hearing about it.
Yeah. How opinionated are we, Brooks? You need to be doing fixed fee. You need to be time tracking. Yeah, absolutely. All right. That's all that I have. We'll see you next time.